Launched at the end of the 20th century, the Sega Dreamcast was one of the most ambitious video game consoles of all time. It had many innovative and cutting-edge features, which helped earn the console a very special place in the hearts of many gamers. In addition to being a console years ahead of its time, the Dreamcast also had an incredible library of games, many of which still run surprisingly well to this day. The best Dreamcast games found ways to push the hardware to its limits, and that's why I brought these games to show you in today's video. It saddens us that we may never get another entry in the Rival Schools series ever again. Capcom truly had something special here, especially when it put out the sequel that improved upon the first game's winning formula. Project Justice is well deserving of its inclusion here on this list of the best Dreamcast games because of its crispier visual sheen, awesome roster full of returning characters and fun newcomers, and shockingly deep story mode presentation. We were so locked in for all the high school drama this game put forth, plus we never got tired of pulling off sick team-up attacks with our custom 3-person squad, Burning Batsu, Zaki, and Ranhibiki FTW. When you mention the best Dreamcast games, this GOAT Capcom fighter deserves many accolades. Sega chose to market Dreamcast's online gaming capability heavily, and at the time there was no FPS that could surpass Quake 3 in that regard. The third game in the series stripped back the single-player component to a series of games against bots, concentrating on the frantic multiplayer matches the series had become known for. The Dreamcast successfully delivered that experience to console players, with the online play surpassing what could be done with split screen at the time. It was even possible to play against PC players who had the Dreamcast map pack installed. The game is back online today too, thanks to dedicated fans. Virtua Fighter 3 is a great game, but it is not the best fighting game on the Dreamcast. That honor goes to Soul Calibur, which served as a launch title for Sega's 6th generation console and remains one of the most highly rated games on Metacritic with a Metascore of 98. Soul Calibur gets just about everything right, and the Dreamcast version is arguably the best way to experience it. The 8-way run allows players to move in 8 different directions rather than just moving horizontally along the third axis, providing a sense of depth that no other 3D fighting game of the era could come close to matching. While EA never brought its Madden games to the Dreamcast, Visual Concepts turned in superb efforts that meant that they were never really missed. NFL 2K2 was the final game in the series to be released on the Dreamcast, and offered all of the options you could want off the field, with an improved running game finally matching the series' signature maximum passing mechanic. The previous games always looked the part in action, and 2K2 was no different, and it boasted some insightful commentary too. Best of all, the game offered online play, which has now been revived by Dreamcast enthusiasts. The Dreamcast didn't have many RPGs, but the ones it did have were good. Along with Skies of Arcadia, Grandia 2 is generally considered one of the 2 best RPGs on the platform, lauded for its excellent soundtrack and even better battle system. While Grandia itself has faded, its mechanics have sprung up in a variety of RPGs over the years, from Ubisoft's Child of Light to penny arcades on the rain-slick precipice of darkness. Grandia 2 was also one of the best-looking games on the Dreamcast, filled with high-quality magic spells, special attacks, and other touches. It was a noticeable cut above what was available on the PlayStation at the time, especially during its most elaborate attack sequences. Its visual luster has faded in the years since, but it's still good fun to play. As demonstrated by the recent remaster, it remains worthy of the Dreamcast's legacy. Metropolis Street Racer is a game that oozes style at every opportunity it gets. Its innovative kudos system encourages players to drive with passion and flair, while its free roam mode served as one of the racing genre's earliest examples of open-world driving. The game was developed by Bizarre Creations, who would go on to be responsible for the Project Gotham Racing series on Xbox. MSR is not only one of the best street racing games ever made, but also one of the most underrated gems in the Dreamcast's incredible library. If you want extreme action in your fighting games, Tecmo has you covered. Combatants get smashed through windows, flung into exploding walls and knocked off high ledges, and then get back up for more. Just when it looks like victory is assured, the fighter on the back foot catches a punch and turns it into a devastating throw. Watching a good round of Dead or Alive 2 is like watching a crazy choreographed fight in a movie, but the real genius is that it's very accessible, with few complex systems and counter moves that can be performed with the D-pad and one button. Capcom was in its creative bag during its 90s heyday. The vast amount of fighting games it put out back then are still played and remembered fondly to this very day. When it dipped its feet into the arena fighter waters, it arrived with the ever-so-memorable Power Stone. This 1v1 fighter deserves all the praise in the world for its implementation of open battlefields that gave way to more strategic maneuvering, entertaining mad dashes for the Power Stones themselves, and the fun reliance on items to even the odds with your many opponents. We'll always be happy to reminisce over the likes of Falcon, Rogue, and Wantang thanks to their flashy combat exploits that powered one of the best Dreamcast games from the fighting game genre. 1999 saw the release of Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64, which helped to define a now popular platform fighter subgenre. It wasn't the only popular platform fighter released that year though, with Capcom's first Power Stone game hitting arcades just a few weeks after Super Smash Bros. Japanese release and arriving on the Dreamcast just a week or so later. Power Stone proved to be so popular that a sequel was released the following year, bringing with it a number of new mechanics and features. Though the series effectively died with the second game, both titles were immensely popular with Dreamcast players and performed incredibly well with critics, comfortably beating out Super Smash Bros. On sites like Game Rankings and Metacritic. There aren't many options for stealth action on the Dreamcast, but Headhunter scratches that itch nicely. You play as Jack Wade, a top-class bounty hunter who wakes up in hospital with an unfortunate case of amnesia. Learning that his former boss in the anti-crime network has been killed, he sets out to solve both mysteries. The game does a great job of showing what the Dreamcast was capable of visually, and the award-winning soundtrack by Richard Jacques is just as impressive. Best of all, the plot has plenty of twists and turns that'll keep you hooked to the very end. One activity that never gets old for gamers is the act of blasting encroaching hordes of the undead. The House of the Dead 2 brought forth that always entertaining premise via an intense light gun shooter experience. The first game is a classic and so is its equally satisfying follow-up. With two Dream Blaster light gun peripherals on deck, two players had all the joy in the world as they shot down zombies and a flood of other hellish creatures across various stages with branching pathways to explore. Claire Redfield has been taken prisoner in the Umbrella Corporation facility on Rockford Island, and you know what that means, another zombie outbreak. While the classic formula of puzzle solving, limited ammunition, and tank controls is still firmly in place, the game has mutated with the power of a new console generation, with full 3D environments replacing the pre-rendered backdrops of old. It's also an important game in the story, which sees the return of both Claire's brother Chris and the series' arch-villain Albert Wesker from the original game, and serves as the true follow-up to Resident Evil 2. Although Dreamcast players did have access to the first two Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, Jet Set Radio holds the crown when it comes to the best sports games on Dreamcast. With its carefully curated soundtrack and its stylish cel-shaded visuals, it's a game that is incredibly difficult to ignore. Inspired by Japanese rhythm games and anti-establishment ideologies, the game has players spraying graffiti and challenging rival gangs as they skate their way around Tokyo's Shibuya and Shinjuku wards. It proved to be a massive hit both in Japan and overseas, leading to the release of a sequel for the original Xbox. It's easy to forget these days, but this game wasn't always super popular. Players were put off by its lack of familiar faces, and 2D was decidedly unfashionable at the time it was released. But Street Fighter III: Third Strike has been reappraised over the years, no doubt in part due to the unforgettable Evo Moment number 37 video of Daigo Umihara's stunning comeback against Justin Wong. With time, we've grown to appreciate the exquisite animation that every character possesses and the mechanics like parries and EX moves that help it stand out from its peers. That belated recognition is thoroughly deserved. Every console needs a killer app at launch. The Dreamcast got just that with the launch of the highly enjoyable playable evolution within the Sonic the Hedgehog series. Sonic Adventure was just as mind-blowing for gamers that came across Super Mario 64. Sega's Blue Blur kept fans engrossed as he ran at hyper speeds across more open environments and got embroiled in a deep storyline with high stakes attached to it. The presence of multiple playable characters that come with different playstyles also adds to Sonic Adventure's allure as the most recognizable 3D platformer for the Dreamcast. Sonic's triumphant run into the realm of 3D platforming deserves to be at the tip of everyone's list of the best Dreamcast games. Contrary to what many people believe, there were actually a few 3D Sonic games before Sonic Adventure, but it was the Dreamcast launch title that finally got the formula right. Granted, it's no Mario 64, but it's still a fantastic platformer with a unique approach to storytelling. Sonic Adventure 2 took everything that made the original game great and improved it, introducing new mechanics, characters, and concepts to great effect. Even the Chao Garden minigame got a complete overhaul with the introduction of Hero and Dark Chaos. If you want a traditional Japanese RPG for your Dreamcast, this is the game for you. You follow the Blue Rogues, a band of air pirates led by Vice, as they fight to prevent the Valuan Empire from taking over the world by reawakening the Silver Gigas, a powerful living weapon. The plot is well told, particularly due to a strong localization job, and there's plenty to explore, so you'll be occupied for a long time. Plus, you get to take part in airship-to-airship combat, as well as fighting regular monsters. How cool is that? When MMORPGs began gaining popularity in the mid to late 90s, they were very much a PC thing. At that time, most consoles couldn't even connect to the internet, let alone do so in a way that would allow players to team up with people all over the world. The Dreamcast changed all that though, with Phantasy Star Online serving as the very first console-based MMORPG. Though the game was a little rough around the edges and lacked many of the features and mechanics that one might expect from a modern MMORPG, it was still an incredibly impressive achievement for the time. The game garnered a small but loyal fan base, with some still playing the game even to this day with the help of special custom servers. The next logical step to take after Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter was a showdown between Marvel and Capcom themselves. Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of Superheroes came to the Dreamcast without any blemishes or shortcomings whatsoever when compared to its arcade counterpart. The same mayhem attached to the game's 2v2, partner-swapping battles, and incredibly catchy soundtrack are and always will be top tier. Capcom's crossover fighting games had always been hyperactive affairs, full of big combos, aerial battles, and screen-filling super moves, but Marvel vs. Capcom 2 took all that to another level. Players have an enormous roster of 56 characters to choose from, covering Street Fighter and Darkstalker's favorites to the likes of Mega Man and Jill Valentine, as well as the X-Men, the Avengers, and more. The pace and intensity of the game's 3-on-3 tag team battles are fun for any fighting game fan, but it's a legendary tournament game too, having been a staple of high-level competition for a whole decade. Both of the Crazy Taxi games on the Dreamcast are fantastic due to how fun they are to play. A big part of this is down to the game's soundtracks, with The Offspring featuring prominently throughout the Dreamcast versions of both titles. Although the second game does get a few extra mini-games and a bit more polish here and there, the soundtrack of the original just about gives it the edge. Players can't really go wrong with either title though, as both still hold up surprisingly well today. Yu Suzuki had made his name as the creator of fast, exciting arcade games, so it was quite a departure for him to tackle an epic RPG. Shenmue's scale and ambition were like nothing else, with a town that felt alive, the weather changed, people had their daily routines, and there were all manner of distractions from an orphan kitten to capsule toys. But what really stands out about the game is how it stripped away RPG conventions, numbers and levels, random battles, and menu-driven combat to ensure that you were fully immersed in the world AM2 had created. The first Shenmue game allowed players to explore Yokosuka, a small city in Japan's Kanagawa Prefecture. In the sequel, though, players find themselves thrown into the sprawling streets of Hong Kong and the walled city of Kowloon that could once be found there. This shift in setting leads to a very different experience, with the cozy feelings evoked by the first game replaced by a sense of wonder, and at times, uncertainty. Shenmue 2 also brought with it a number of quality-of-life improvements, the most notable of which being the ability to advance time automatically rather than having to wait for certain events to take place. This drastically improves the pacing of the narrative, which tends to be one of the biggest complaints that people have about the first game. It's everything that a good video game sequel should be and many people's top pick when it comes to the best Dreamcast game. So, did you like the games I recommended? So leave your like, subscribe to the channel to follow me and activate the bell because I post a lot of videos on this channel and you can't miss it. I would like to remind you that in the description we have a list of different products that can make your gaming experience much better. If you want to buy, the link will be in the description. Anyway, thank you very much for following me this far and until next time, bye.